Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope you've all been enjoying the post-ban standard, kind of getting a rotation kind of experience a month early. And Selesnya Rabbits has been looking like it's been doing pretty well. Same with the 4-color dinosaurs. We'll be curious to see how things kind of settle out by the next best of 1, best of 3 meta review on Monday. But what we're doing here today is the community deck tech. So every once in a while, I put out a post requesting you guys to submit some decks that you've been working on, and so that we can work on them together as a community. So I only had 2 submissions this week, so I'm going to throw in one of my brews just to hear back from you guys as well. So remember, this is a friendly discussion. I'm just going to try to give you some pointers from the things that I've learned after playing a ridiculous amount of Magic the Gathering. So first up here, we've got the submission by Jay Sather, and this is an Esper Oculus deck. So we've got Jeskai Oculus, which is the kind of red version, and this one is ditching the red to bring in black. And the payoffs for that is that we get the Emmet Selch Unsundered, which helps us get things into the graveyard. But then if you have 14 or more cards in your graveyard, you get to transform it. And during your turn, you may play cards from your graveyard. So flipping this gives us a lot of late game potential. We also have Resentful Revelation that we got in Final Fantasy, which helps us fill the graveyard. Bitter Triumph is a way to kind of like sort of like chart a course, right? Be able to like get the Abhorrent Oculus into the graveyard if it's in our hand. Duress helps out against this deck's problem, which is counter spells as a combo deck. Go for the Throat is really good removal. And then the core of it is what we have seen for a long time. I guess this one's also running the Quistis Trape from Final Fantasy. And honestly, this is one of the cards that feels a little bit out of place to me, because you are getting to cast some of your powerful instances like, Bitter Triumph or Go for the Throat. But I feel like the graveyard is such a valuable resource, especially because you don't have a whole bunch of mill. Like you've got like enough, right? But if we want to hit 14 cards in there, I feel like it's kind of a precious resource. So to me, the one card that feels a little bit out of place is the Quistis Trape. But the rest of it is definitely a tried and true story. Kira also wanting to hit Threshold, giving us payoffs for hitting the graveyard. Stock Up was a card that I'm surprised wasn't banned, but is a pretty powerful one, right? Kind of almost want to see more inclusions of the Stock Up, just because of how powerful it is. The other thing, too, that I like to talk about just really quickly is kind of the mana base. So right now, you've got 15 blue sources, and for your turn 2 Picklock Prankster, you would need 13, and then for all of your 3-cost blue spells, you could get away with 12. So you've got a little bit more blue than you need. On Temporary Lockdown, if you're going to want to cast this on turn 3, you're looking at wanting to have 18 sources, and you have 17, so that would mean you'd be casting this more reliably on turn 4. You are only running 2 of the Temporary Lockdowns, so it's not that big of a deal, and giving you ample enough white to cast the Get Lost and the Recommission, which again would be the 13 sources of white. And then as far as your black goes, you've got 14. It's the smallest amount of your colors. I think 14 is fine for what you're trying to do. You're definitely not casting a turn 1 Duress, because a lot of, if we're talking about your turn 1 black sources, you have not 14. So then you also threw together a sideboard, which looks pretty good to me. I mean, you got Elspeth's Smite for against aggro, the 3rd copy of Duress for against control. Exercise gives you some enchantment hate. You've got Disdainful Stroke for against decks like Domain. Ghost Vacuum for Graveyard Matters decks, Get Lost for Planeswalkers, as well as an additional enchantment hate. Negate kind of along with the Duress for against control. Pest Control helps you against the go wide strategies, along with the 3rd copy of the Temporary Lockdown. And then you got the 1 copy of Deadly Cover-Up, which also helps out against the combo decks. If they have a single piece that you can remove with the Deadly Cover-Up, then it just wins you the game. So thanks for your submission, Jay Sather, and if you guys have any suggestions about did you try this, please leave a comment below. Oh, one last thing before we move on. You should put Starting Town in this deck. I guess the other thing that I did note was that you have 25 lands in here, and Jeskai Oculus is usually on a lower land count, like 22 or 23, because of how much filtering there is. And so there might be a little bit less filtering in this list compared to the Jeskai version with red, but you probably would benefit off of getting the Starting Town, or at least a couple copies in here somewhere. And this is the starting town, so enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game. Pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color. Definitely helpful in the 3-color space, and is largely going to be replacing a lot of the pain lands that are rotating out in Brothers War come August, or end of July, actually. So the second submission here was Steve Mann, which is kind of like Golgari Midrange, and it's a nod a little bit towards the Vraska one-turn kill with the combination of the Innkeeper's Talent and the Vraska's Betrayal Sting, which if you haven't seen before, this one, if you've got it on the final level 3 chapter, if you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, you put twice that many on that permanent or player instead. So Planeswalkers enter in with double their loyalty counters. So this would come in with 12 loyalty counters, meaning that you could ultimate for the downtick of -9 immediately. And because you get double the poison counters as well, it would give your opponent 18 poison counters. So it wins the turn that you play it if you have the Innkeeper's Talent in play. So I'm happy to see that you got that, because that's one of the payoffs, I think, to being in Golgari. At least fun to have a little bit of that. So you're bringing in Cecil Dark Knight as well as the Dark Confidant in Final Fantasy, and both of these are really going to help the pace of the format. And because you've got this Death Toucher here, I think is why you're bringing in the Hunter's Talent. And then you've also got the Urborg Scavengers. I think this card is a little bit out of place because you don't have a lot of self-mill. You don't have, if you're playing this out as a 2/2 on turn 3 because you have no graveyard, it feels bad, right? And you don't really have any form of mill, right? So I get that you got like some Death Touch in here that you're trying to take advantage of, but I don't think there's enough graveyard synergies to really make the Urborg Scavengers shine. So that would be one I think to kind of lean away from. Dark Confidant, there's a little bit of non-synergies the higher up on the list that you go. You don't have a lot of top end, but pulling a Vraska with your Dark Confidant is definitely going to hurt. So you may want to try lowering the curve and just not going for the 1-turn kill, because you don't have a lot of ramp, right? So getting to the 6-cost Vraska, I'm glad you only have 1 copy, because if you had the full 4, you would need to lean more heavily into getting it enabled to actually hit 6. But this is another card that I feel is a little bit out of place, just because if you do not have a board, it doesn't really do much, right? And so right now you've got a 19-19 split of black and green, and you don't really need to have early green. Snakeskin Veil we're not casting on turn 1. Hunter's Talent, Innkeeper's Talent, and Terra Sunder we're not usually casting on turn 2, although we could if we have a Cecil. And then turn 3 is really where it starts looking better, because you've done your like Cecil and Dark Confidant, or you're slamming your Glissa Sunslayer. You need that like third thing of green. So you could run quite a bit lower amounts of green, and part of that is because you've got your Verge Land. So if we look at this, turn 1 is a forest, right? And then afterwards becomes split mana if you have a swamp or a forest. And so if you count the amount of turn 1 black sources that you need, to cast Cecil, you would want 14 untapped black, and right now you have 12. So since we're not casting green really until turn 3 with Glissa, I would be tempted to cut 2 forests and bring in 2 swamps. And I think that would make it a little bit more likely that you could throw something in like Go for the Throat that isn't as dependent on having a board state, that might work better than the Hunter's Talent. Now I get that the Trample works well with Death Touch, but generally that's better when you have a big creature, and this is actually a relatively small deck. The other thing too that I feel like is a staple, and it is a pretty good Golgari card, is the Mosswood Dread Knight. Just because the 3/2 trample just keeps coming back and like drawing you cards, and is a pretty good performing card in my opinion. So I'd be tempted to get the Mosswood Dread Knight back in here, over probably the Urborg Scavengers or the Hunter's Talent, or somewhere around there. And then the rest of it, though, I think Genova is a really interesting inclusion from Final Fantasy. I think it's definitely going to see play somewhere. Obviously, putting a +1/+1 counter on Glissa Sunslayer makes this into an even bigger, nastier threat. If you do keep the Scavengers, I'd like to see some form of lifelink, right? Like, there's a couple of different ways that you can get Urborg Scavengers to have lifelink. The one that comes to mind is the colorless 7/7 keyword soup card that we got, the 7 colorless guy. I can get you the name later if you don't know what I'm talking about, but that one seems to be kind of a nice one to pair with the Urborg Scavengers if you can get it into your graveyard, which this deck can't. You do have the lifelink off of Gix's command, but that's only 2. right? So like there's a couple of things that just feel like a little bit unfocused, I guess, is that like it's not fully an Innkeeper's Vraska deck, and there's a couple of non-synergies just a little bit that personally I'd lean a little bit towards a different path. But again, I like where you're going with it. I think that Golgari looks pretty good, especially post ban and coming into the rotation. I hope we see the rock shine a little bit more, because now that we've gotten rid of the up the beanstalk, I think that domain was the real big problem for Golgari. And so with domain being gone, or at least heavily hurt, I think it's Golgari's time to shine. So hope my comments find you well. Again, if you guys have any thoughts, love to hear your thoughts on the deck as well. And I do think that like Cecil and Dark Confidant both really pump the gas that this deck can do, right? So like we can push a faster tempo than what we were doing before, which is maybe why you cut the Mosswood Dread Knight to kind of change the tempo of the deck. But yeah, anyway, thanks for the submission. All right, and this is the one that I've been working on. This is a theory craft. Obviously, I haven't gotten to actually play with the cards yet. When I'm usually lagging a little bit behind because I like to draft the set, and so I'm about halfway through my pack collection to where I'll actually start playing with the Final Fantasy cards. So since there were only 2 submissions, we'll also talk about my brew real quickly. So this one's Selesnya Enchantments. It was an up the beanstalk deck. I was going to lean off of the Overlord synergies with that. But I do still think that they're strong enchantment creatures to pair with Yuna, Hope of Spira. And looking at the stats on Yuna, she has some really impressive stats, and typically in decks that are not particularly good. So I think that if we can figure out a way to get Yuna to really shine, then this is going to be a powerful card. Now, they're trying to move to have more of the impactful cards coming up in the next couple of sets be higher than 1 cost or 2 cost. That was something that they learned with the Quarry Steel Cutter, was just the average CMC or average mana value of the cards that were banned were all low, and so they want more of the impactful cards to start being a little bit higher, which means that I think that they're just going to try to make mid-range actually into a viable strategy. And so a couple of things, my thoughts were, we need ramp to be able to actually get to 5 mana so that we can play Yuna, right? And then we need enchantment synergies. We got some cool ones, right? So we've got like the Summon Fenrir has been a pretty impressive enchantment that helps us ramp into turn 5. Buried in the Garden helps us give us rainbow mana, which I thought was nice with High Noon, along with the domain off of Overlord of the Hauntwoods, could actually let us cast red off of High Noon without having to run any red sources later in the game. And then because we're really kind of just looking to ramp and play a single card each turn, I don't think the deck double spells particularly well, which makes it a nice High Noon. You could put something in like Authority of the Consuls if you wanted to slow things down, which does pair nicely with Split Up. I was thinking we do some sort of Wrath for the board, especially because like originally I was just accepting the fact that this was going to be bad against Azorius Omniscience, because we don't have a really great way to affect the graveyard. Obviously we could throw something in like Scrap Shooter or whatever it's called that like can exile the graveyard. But I wanted to keep it more focused, at least as a starting spot, right? So the idea is we get these out on the board. If they get answered, we can bring them back with Yuna. The lifelink that we get off of these and Trample also helps kind of push damage through and stabilize, sort of like Zur, but in less of a 3-color space. And then Summon Titan was an enchantment creature that I thought looked particularly nice to pair with so Esper Origins and Summon Titan and help us get hits for Yuna in the graveyard. And then kind of borrowing off of what Domain was doing in the past of just running the Temporary Lockdown and Sunfall, instead we're running Split Up and Ultima, just to kind of clear the board after we've ramped and fallen behind a little bit, and then we can bring things back with Yuna. So Esper Origins gives us a little bit of life gain. I think in theory it looks like a fun deck to play. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If you play it, let me know how it goes too. I know it's an expensive one to craft, but if you have the mythics already, I don't know. I feel like I'm on to something here. So Anyway, thanks for being a part of the community. Thanks for engaging with this. And if you want your deck critiqued, look for it in the future. I will admit though that the next little bit, so like usually I do it every 2 weeks. In 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be doing my budget decks for Edge of Eternities and Rotation. And then I think by the so the 29th, which is in 4 weeks from now, we have Edge of Eternities and Rotation. So we don't have a lot of time. So which means the 18th of July is my pre-release video, and then the 21st through the 25th is when I'm going to be doing early access and brews and stuff like that. So there's no time for me to do more community deck techs. So this was kind of it for Final Fantasy. It is a shorter set than the ones in the past. So once we get Edge of Eternities in and we kind of let the dust settle a little bit, I'll be looking to probably do another community deck tech in August around the 12th or the 19th. So once we're fully into the new standard. But yeah, thanks again for always listening to my ramblings. I hope it finds you well. I hope you're doing well, playing Magic the Gathering and enjoying life and all that good stuff. Let me know again in the comments below if you found this helpful, if you have any questions. It's all to try to help everybody enjoy Magic more. And on Sunday, I'll be looking at meta breakers, trying to figure out what the new meta is like, kind of give you a little bit of a taste there on Sunday. And then on Monday, we'll see the first week of like post-ban, how things have kind of settled. So take care, everybody. I'll see you on Sunday.